The legendary Houdini is renowned as a popular magician and escape artist. The Hungarian-born American started his performance in the late 19th century and toured the US and Europe with his many astonishing feats. He is remembered for the uniquely skillful tricks he developed, starting from escaping handcuffs to underwater straitjackets, being chained to skyscrapers and buried alive, and amazing conjuring such as making an elephant disappear. Although many recognise his tricks as faked, Houdini insisted on maintaining professional standards, suing imitators and also exposing other artists as fraudulent. But there was one chilling phenomenon that he was never able to solve the mystery of. The following are 5 attempts Houdini made to expose fraudsters. Number 5. Busting. Amongst Houdini's miraculous escapes and disappearing tricks, his activities incorporated a pet hate for spiritual mediums. Following the death of his mother in the 1920s, Houdini made it his personal mission to debunk and discredit those claiming to contact and channel spirits of the deceased. During that time, following World War I, many families were devastated by the loss of their loved ones. Through these horrific conflicts, Houdini saw the spiritualists' claims to make contact with his lost souls on the other side as exploiting the grief of the living, and he embarked on a crusade to uncover the deceptive practices of spiritual mediums. His training in magic made it easy to expose psychic chicanery such as floating objects, mysterious bells, Ouija board tricks and other eerie séance phenomena. His practice was to attend readings incognito and accompanied by a journalist and police officer. He even outed a hugely famous clairvoyant of the time called Mina Crandon, known as Marjorie. Houdini also exposed how so-called spiritual photographs could be faked. Some showed ectoplasm pouring from a subject's body, or a spectral apparition of transparent Lincoln weirdly appearing in a family group photo. With the art of photography still in its infancy, Houdini demonstrated how these effects were achieved through a simple process of overexposure and superimposing images on each other. Prominent and educated people had been successfully fooled by these tricks in their grief-driven search for solace. Number 4. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Houdini's crusade against psychic fraud alienated his friend, British author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The Sherlock Holmes creator was a self-avowed spiritualist and a member of the famous Ghost Club, a paranormal investigation agency founded in London in 1862. Doyle proclaimed spiritualism the new revelation, a divine gift sent to comfort the bereaved. He became an even stronger adherent to spiritualism following the loss of his son and brother in the Great War, believing that he had communicated with them through a trance-induced medium. While Houdini campaigned against the fraud and trickery employed by spiritual mediums, Doyle bizarrely came to believe that Houdini himself possessed supernatural powers which he used to perform his stunts, and that his debunking of psychic mediums was a ploy to block their powers. Houdini insisted that his own magic tricks were pure illusion, even performing a trick in the home of a mutual friend to convince Doyle not to endorse paranormal phenomena. The disagreement between the two men grew into a bitter public debate, which saw them become enemies, and Doyle's labelling Houdini a dangerous opponent. Number 3. Mary Fairfield McVickers. Mrs. Mary Fairfield McVickers was an associate pastor of the First Spiritualist Temple in Los Angeles. In 1922, on the occasion of her 73rd birthday, she had boldly informed a gathering of her family, friends and 200 members of her church that she had had a premonition of her deceased self in a coffin. She went on to insist that in the event of her passing within the next year, a photograph be taken of her inside the casket at precisely 5 p.m. on the day of her funeral. She claimed that if these wishes were carried out, she would be enabled to appear in spirit form beside her remains. McVicker's shocked audience was to fulfill her wishes because, in keeping with a prophetic vision, she did pass within the year. And on April 11th, 1923, Houdini, in his ghost-busting role, made his way to the first spiritualist temple to investigate the possibility of her predicted appearance. Number 2. The photograph. With forensic exactitude, Houdini had enlisted the assistance of a professional photographer and then ensured that freshly unwrapped photographic plates randomly selected by a bystander were placed in the camera. On their arrival at the church, just before 5 p.m, his photographer took 10 photographs of Mrs. McVicker's open casket next to a deliberately placed black curtain in order to show up any visual phenomena. Houdini had taken several witnesses with him to observe, including a journalist from the Los Angeles Examiner. Another of the observers, Albert Hetzel, excitedly pointed out that he could see spirit faces floating against the wall of the funeral parlour, and, not disbelieving him, Houdini had a photo of himself taken with a pencil under the chin of one of the faces. In his diary, he recorded faces, either through accident or design, could possibly be recognised and seen on the wall. After the photographs had been taken, exactly as requested by McVickers, the men immediately returned to the dark room where the photos were developed in Houdini's presence. To his astonishment, on the second photo appeared what he called a peculiar streak, a strange luminescent formation which he later described as an ethereal form surrounding this streak of light, in a shape that might resemble the shroud of a small woman, and with McVicker's face discernible. The formation has to this day not been explained, even by photographic experts, who said at the time that its appearance was not due to defects in the plate holder or camera. Houdini confirmed that the negative was flawless and offered fellow magicians a reward of $1,000 if they could duplicate the photo, but none was able. He had the good grace to admit that there was no explanation for the mysterious glowing mass, while stopping short of calling it a ghost photo. Given his scrupulous methodology in obtaining the images, Houdini's statement to the press was, "I cannot say that this is a spirit photograph of Mrs. McVickers, nor can I deny it." Number 1. Rosabelle Believe. Houdini never described himself as a skeptic, saying that his 25 years of spiritualist investigations were from a religious leaning and an earnest desire to be convinced of an afterlife. He and his wife Bess had agreed that if we were able to communicate after his death, he would use a code phrase, Rosabelle Believe. Rosabelle was the name of their favourite song. Following Houdini's passing in 1926, Bess conducted yearly séances at Halloween with the assistance of the prominent psychic Arthur Ford in her attempt to communicate with her husband. Despite Ford apparently uncovering the secret code in 1929, it was later found that he too was a fraud who had extensively researched his subjects and had read the code in a biography of Houdini. After 10 years of fruitless séances and burning an eternal candle next to Houdini's photograph, Bess finally snuffed out the flame and gave up her attempts. She later said that 10 years was long enough to wait for any man. Perhaps Houdini's final disappearance into the ether was his last statement about the questionable practice of spiritualism. However, the one case he could not crack remains in the annals of history.